right, guys, this is our lesson on genetic disorders and diseases, and we're going to look at how that relates to inheritance patterns. Um, at the end, I'm going to just list a lot of diseases that we have talked about previously in this course, so that will save us a little bit of time, but it is pretty in-depth here starting out. And so, again, it's some stuff we've already talked about, but I'm showing you how it splits up. So some definitions to know for this. First, autosome. So an autosome is any chromosome that is not a sex chromosome. So we know the XY makes up one of the 23 pairs in your karyotype. The other 22 would be the autosome. And then the sex chromosomes are the 23rd pair of chromosomes that determine the individual's sex. So there are different types of disorder inheritance. One of them is autosomal dominant, which means it's a condition that is not on a sex chromosome. This occurs, again, in pairs 1 through 22. You only need one copy of the disease-causing allele to have the disease. Autosomal recessive is a recessive condition on a chromosome that is not a sex chromosome. You have to have two copies of the disease-causing allele to have it, obviously, because you only express recessive if you have two recessive alleles. If it's a dominant disorder, then you only need one. You can have a male carrier with an autosomal disorder. And then we also have sex-linked and sex-linked recessive, which we've already discussed in a previous lesson, is where the X chromosome possesses the gene or the allele for the disorder. So females must have two recessive alleles, one for each X chromosome. Males only need one because they only have one X, which means these are more common in males. So let's look at chromosomal disorders. And these chromosomal disorders, this is the other type. So the first one was autosomal and sex-linked. Now, chromosomal means you have more or less than your 46 chromosomes that you should have. You know, you have 23 pairs. Generally, these are not inherited. This can just be something that happens based on how the chromosomes split during the cell cycle. So it happens when homologous chromosomes fail to separate during meiosis, and this is referred to as non-disjunction, which you have heard that term before. And you can see non-disjunction here in this picture. So now let's jump into autosomal recessive disorders. And the first one we're going to talk about is cystic fibrosis. So this causes sticky, thick mucus to build up in the lungs and the stomach. And it's very common, and it's most common fatal genetic disease in the United States. My sister had a friend in high school, actually, who died 2 or 3 months before graduation due to cystic fibrosis. So it is very, very common. Symptoms of this are difficulty breathing and digesting food. And a lot of times it leads to, lung transplants and things like that. Most males with cystic fibrosis are sterile, and females do have difficulty conceiving. And then the life expectancy of someone with cystic fibrosis is around 30 years. So this is a picture of what a regular set of lungs looks like, healthy lungs. And this is what lungs look like of someone with cystic fibrosis. So you can see the mucus that has built up in those lungs, making it very difficult for them to breathe. Another autosomal recessive is sickle cell anemia. And this is where your blood cells become sickle-shaped, so they look more like a C than the normal round shape of our red blood cells. This is a mutation on the hemoglobin gene in the cells. And symptoms of this are blood clots because they can't flow as easily, poor circulation, and dizziness. I actually knew someone in high school who had this. So treatment is blood thinning medicine so that they can't clot as easy, diet that's rich in iron, and blood transfusions more regularly. 1 in 400 African Americans are afflicted with sickle cell anemia, and then 1 in 12 African Americans are carriers. This does tend to have a connection with malaria, and those with sickle cell are actually more likely to survive malaria if they are exposed to it. So this shows you normal cells versus sickle cells. And keep in mind, like someone that has and is affected by sickle cell anemia does still have regular shaped blood cells as well. They just also produce these sickle shaped cells. So you see how easily those normal red blood cells flowed through the vessel, which is what this looks like. Now, if they're sickle cells and normal red blood cells, they aren't going to flow as easily because they're not all the same shape that can kind of like tumble and flow over. They get kind of clumped up together. All right, another disease is Tay-Sachs disease, and this is caused by a buildup of fatty acids on the nerve cells and the brain. It begins at 3 months. The baby will lose vision and then all mental and physical functions. There's no treatment or cure for this, and the normal life expectancy is before the age of 5. 1 in 2,500 odds that this is in a Jewish population. And then we have phenylketonuria. I always struggle with this one because I always call it PKU. So this is, again, an autosomal recessive. This affects 1 in 14,000. And this is where a person cannot break down the amino acid phenylalanine. And so it builds up. And once you build up so much of that, it actually becomes extremely toxic in your system. Symptoms of this are lighter skin, hair, and eyes. And it can lead to mental retardation if it's not treated by diet. And that is actually the treatment is a very, very strict diet. So you see all these things they are not allowed to eat to prevent a buildup of that phenylalanine. If untreated, PKU can lead to mental retardation within 1 year. Like that's how quickly it can cause effects on the body. And then most people with PKU will live normal, healthy lives as long as they manage the diet that they need to prevent that buildup. And this is like a chart that a lot of people get to show them kind of where they need to stick in terms of their foods. This here can show you, I just wanted to bring this up. Maybe. Hold on. I wanted to bring this slide up because I wanted you to see what a oh, my pen's not working. I wanted you to see this chart right here to the side. I'll just circle it this way. Right there. Okay. Because this is a different way. We're going to talk about this in the next lesson, but this is what's called a pedigree with pictures. Normally we don't use pictures like this, but it shows expression of alleles when you don't have a Punnett square, you don't want to write one. So this shows if you have two parents that are carriers because they are half white and half blue, the chances of them having offspring, 1 will be affected, 2 of them will be carriers, and then 1 will be completely unaffected. So it does still show you the same thing that a Punnett square will show you. Albinism is another one. So you guys know that what albinism is. It's also recessive, and it's a lack of pigment or melanin in the skin, eyes, and hair. In extreme cases, it can cause deafness as well. And this affects about 1 in 17,000 human births, but it also affects other species. Now let's talk about our autosomal dominant diseases. We have Huntington's disease, and this affects 1 in 10,000 normally. It's a degenerative brain disorder, and most patients will exhibit symptoms between ages 30 and 40, and those symptoms are starting to lose your motor functions very easily, so trouble walking and talking, controlling emotions, movement, things like that. There's no cure or treatment, but scientists have found the gene that causes Huntington's, so you can be tested for it early. Okay, so again, it shows you the little pedigree down there. And this actually shows the degeneration of the brain. So the one up top here is a control, and this is one with Huntington, so you can tell how much the brain has broken down. I struggle saying this. Achondroplasia is also dominant, and this is a bone disorder that causes dwarfism, and the odds are like 1 in 30,000. Other forms of dwarfism are recessive. This is the one that is dominant, though. And now let's talk about our sex-linked, which we've discussed in a previous unit as well, or previous lesson. Hemophilia, again, remember this is where your blood fails to clot the correct way. It's more common in males because it is X-linked, and it's about 1 in 5,000. Symptoms include excessive bleeding and bleeding in the joints. So it actually, like if you get a bruise, that's very dangerous because it will cause internal bleeding. Treatment for this is with replacement therapy. So you will add platelets back into your system with donated blood. And here is just a quick pedigree to show you what that would look like. And then red-green color blindness, specifically red-green, is the X-linked recessive. So this affects roughly 1 out of 10 males and then 1 out of 100 females. Remember, the difference here is because females have 2 X's, and for them to express this allele, they have to have 2 recessive X's, whereas the men only have to have 1 recessive X. It's most commonly individuals are unable to distinguish the shades of red and green between those. There are other types, though, that you have. So blue-yellow is another type of color blindness, and then all colors. Like some people just can't see any colors. So red-green color blindness is caused by an abnormal gene for photoreceptors in the retina. And the genes for both red and green photoreceptors are located on the X chromosome. So color blindness can result from recessive alleles for either one or both of these genes. And then our chromosomal disorders we've talked about in the past, so that's why I just kind of listed them here, are Down syndrome, which is trisomy 31, so 3 chromosomes on the 21 part of your karyotype. Edwards syndrome, which is trisomy 18. Patau, which is trisomy 13. Turner, which means you only have 1 full X. It affects females on their karyotype. And Klinefelter, which is XXY, so males with an